Super. Welcome to the 21st Open Seminar of the Chair of Commercial and Corporate Law. Today we have a great honor to have with us Professor Ann Sanders from University of Bielefeld. But before I will introduce our guest in a little bit more details, I would like also to thank our partner with whom we co-organize this kind of event, the Economic and Commercial Law section of the District Bar Council in Warsaw, and Dr. Kamil Schmidt, who is the head of the section and all sections, in fact, within the District Bar Council in Warsaw, is with us. So, Dr. Schmidt, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Rosajda. Well, this seminar is very important for us as we explore legal scholarship and comparative ideas. And it's important from the, of course, from the practical point of view. I'm very privileged to welcome Professor Ann Sanders from Universität Bielefeld. She will present on European foundation law in comparative perspective, a topic very relevant to our community, not only academic community, but also from the perspective of Warsaw Bar Association. Professor, let me say that your presence and participation, I hope, will enrich the dialogue and contribute to the vibrant academic discourse that characterize our community and our Warsaw Bar Association. As Professor Rosajda mentioned, we have plenty of sections in Warsaw Bar Association, and we hope that again our meeting will enrich our cooperation. Let me give back the floor to Professor Rosajda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Schmidt. We are very happy that you are our partners. As I said at the beginning, it's already 21st seminar, and we did all these seminars together. So I believe that it is a great idea, great cooperation between practice on one side and academia on the other side. So we are very grateful for this cooperation for so many years. Our open seminars is kind of a typical event in the sense that we always have at least three such seminars a year. And one a year is always an international seminar, comparative seminar, like this one. The first one that we usually have in fall is mostly devoted to Polish law. And then our guest is an established Polish law professor, whereas the last one, the spring seminar, is mostly from practical perspective, and we invite great practitioners to share their experience. And as usual, at the end will be the first to receive the invitation for the next seminar that I will share at the end of this meeting. Our today's seminar, as Dr. Schmidt mentioned, is about European foundation law. And especially in Poland, it's a very hot topic because of new legislation, because of kind of unexpected popularity of family foundations. We have several hundreds of them already and growing. And this is why it's particularly important to look at experience of other jurisdictions, how they deal with family foundations, private foundations. And our guest, Professor Ann Sanders, is the best person to share with us this experience because she's involved. In fact, she's kind of co-head of a great project established by the European Law Institute about enterprise foundations. And she's also co-editor of a book about enterprise foundations. So she does a lot of in-depth research regarding the very fundamental question, what is an enterprise foundation? In which way a foundation may run business, in an active way, or maybe only in a passive way as a kind of owner. and what does it mean to be an owner of a company. And all these topics will be dealt with also today during our Professor Sanders holds the chair for civil law, company law, the law of family businesses, and judicial studies at the University of Bielefeld in Germany. She is also co-director of the Institute for Family Businesses at the University of Bielefeld. She has also some practical experience. Sometime in the past, she was part-time judge at the regional court in Germany. And from more personal perspective, she's a daughter of director Helma Sanders-Brahms, and she's also kind of connected with very famous Johannes Brahms. And her father is famous cinematographer Thomas Mau. She studied at Humboldt University of Berlin, and then she did her PhD in Cologne and master degree at Oxford University. And now she is in Warsaw, and we are happy to have her here. And I'm not taking more time. The schedule of our seminar is also kind of structured in the same way. So first we will have about 50 to 60 minutes of presentation, and then there will be open floor for any questions or comments. So if you have any questions, please keep them in your memory or write them down. And then in the second part, I will invite you to ask your questions either by asking the questions personally, if it is possible, or by writing them on chat, and then I will read them loud. Professor Sanders, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, that would be great. Okay, thank you. I hope everybody can see the slides now. Yes? Okay. Yes. Okay, thank you very much for this very, very kind introduction. I feel deeply honored to be here. I feel deeply honored by this very kind introduction and by the invitation to Warsaw. I have been to Warsaw before, first as a very small child when my mother, who had shot a film with Christina Janda, was here and visited Christina Janda. Then I was here for events also at this university, talking about judicial independence. This is also a work of my studies, and I gave a presentation about judicial independence in Germany, and I was very honored to be there and speak for also and also attend the annual meeting of the judges of Justitia, which for me represent the best and most courageous what people can do to safeguard the rule of law and what I believe is important as a lawyer. So I'm deeply moved and honored to be here and very grateful that I'm allowed to be in this beautiful country and meet so many wonderful people. So, but now we talk about European law and comparative perspective. And we have a little agenda, of course. So after an introduction, I'll approach the question what a foundation is. This is the first part of this little presentation, and then I will talk about enterprise foundations, a topic that Konrad has already highlighted. And then I'll conclude with some policy considerations, which also may form some sort of starting point for discussion maybe. Okay, so let's start. Maybe you should start with a bad joke. So what is a foundation? Well, apparently this is not the right answer. So let's go into a more legal direction. What is a foundation? Okay, a foundation is a private entity we see here, number one, with legal personality, but without members or shareholders. It's in the pursuit of one or more, in principle, unchangeable purposes. And it's independent from its founder and has an, in principle, irrevocable transfer of property. It is organized according to a charter. It is administered by its directors. It's publicly supervised, and it requires registration. And then we'll look on some functional equivalents, and then we will have a look outside the civil law world into the common law. So this is the agenda for our first part. Okay, so I just said that it's a private entity with legal personality without members or shareholders. Okay, we are all lawyers, so we all know what legal personality means. So, but if we talk about this with students, actually, you could say that this is a bit of a miracle, isn't it? That we create a human being in a way which might have certain rights or different or the same as normal human beings. But it's definitely something that law students, when they start thinking about it, have some difficulties understanding. And maybe we as professors or lawyers have these difficulties too, but we don't think about them all the time, which is always a good thing with difficult problems. Okay, second, without members or shareholders. And this is really interesting because most legal entities we deal with, corporations, associations, cooperatives, and partnerships, if we count them here, they have members or shareholders. They organize real people, and real people come together here and they make decisions collectively. So they come together and fight and do things and so on. So, but this legal entity then is dominated by real people, at least in the background. But a foundation is something different. A foundation has no members or shareholders. And this is very interesting. One could say that the foundation is in a way the absolute, the most kind of legal person you can have, because it has no real people behind it. It is there it has only directors, no members or shareholders, to pursue the historic will of the founder. So I suppose some foundation lawyers will be a bit angry with this this picture, but I do think that a foundation is a bit like a Frankenstein. Like Frankenstein, you create an artificial being, and this artificial being is sort of will have the will of another person implemented, and then sort of walks on its own doing things, but has no real people behind it. And so I think this is something to be kept in mind when you think about foundations. So first, okay, then what does this thing do? It's in the pursuit of one or more, in principle, unchangeable purposes established by the founder. So the purpose is really the heart and guiding light of the memberless foundations, because there is no collective decision-making, no sharing of ideas or wills among members. And the only guiding light it has is the purpose and the will of the historic founders. There are some rules about this. First, you cannot have a foundation for the founder. So, and you can have no foundation that has no purpose but to administrate itself. These are sort of the most basic ideas. So the foundation should do something outside of itself. It shouldn't be a sort of self-sufficient entity. But this is more or less agreed upon in most legal systems. But the sort of details about which purposes are permissible and how if at all, you can change a purpose in different legal systems is a very interesting part of comparative research. First of all, when foundation law started in the Middle Ages, basically as entities for the church, it required a charitable purpose. First, a sort of sacral religious purpose, and then a kind of charitable purpose. But with the development of legal development in most countries, you had a development away from the pure charitable purposes towards a more neutral approach to foundations. Today, in most legal systems, it is enough that a foundation has a purpose that does not cause any harm. So it can be neutral. There's no need anymore that it is good for something, it just shouldn't be bad for others. But there are still exceptions. For example, in most countries, tax benefits, a beneficial tax treatment, is only given to charitable foundations with charitable purposes. And in some legal systems, you have special foundations pursuing only charitable purposes. Like, for example, in Austria, there is the federal foundation, the so-called Bundesstiftung, that has to pursue a charitable purpose. And then there is the Austrian private foundation on the other side that only pursues private purposes. But in most legal systems, there is one foundation doing everything. So in Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, Austria, Italy, and Germany, you don't need a charitable purpose to set up a foundation. Okay, then we come to the next kind of purpose, because the purpose really can be seen as a best way to differentiate between different kinds of foundations. The family foundation. The family foundation is the most important example for private foundations. So for a foundation that does not pursue a purpose for the common good, but for private individuals. And the family foundation is still under great discussion in many legal systems. And it's because in most legal systems, there used to be things like called fideikommissum or majorat, entities that were set up to secure the property, the income of noble families. So if you were a noble family and you didn't believe in your children's and their children's frugality, which usually was something to be doubted, then you could put all the family property into a fideikommissum. That was not a foundation, it's not a legal entity, but it was a way to sort of put this property outside of the market. So people couldn't sell the property within the fideikommissum, but they could benefit from it. And they couldn't use it as security for debts. So it wasn't really, a fideikommissum isn't a foundation, but a family foundation can be used in the same way to secure property for the next generation. And the fideikommissum was under huge discussion in many European countries and were abolished in most countries after World War I. So in the 18th and 19th century, there was always these huge discussions about whether the fideikommissum hinders economic development, whether it would sort of preserve social inequality. So this is why they're still under big discussion, and this is why family foundations are still seen as a bit dodgy, because you can use them basically for the same purposes. But they are permissible in many countries. For example, in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, in the German-speaking world, family foundations are very important. And they are very important, especially for succession planning of family businesses. So, and I understand that the Polish Family Foundation was set up also with the purpose to help Polish family businesses to organize their succession. As I understand, there's the first round of successions of Polish family businesses now coming up, and that this was sort of developed for it. So in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, family foundations play a big role about that. In other countries, there is some debate, and there are sort of more stricter conditions for having family foundations. For example, Denmark and Sweden, they require very strict conditions. For example, you can only benefit family members with a certain amount of neediness. And in Italy, it's unclear how this is how permissible they really are. Okay. Next point: a family foundation is independent of its founders and requires an in principle irrevocable transfer of property. So setting up a foundation, we've learned, is not a legal person with members or shareholders, but it is in a way a property with legal personality. One could also, I mean, I put this Frankenstein picture for it, but you could also say it's a sort of property, a bag of money with a human character. I'm not so sure that's better, but let's. Maybe I should work on this analogy a little bit. Okay, so and then a foundation is organized according to its charter. It has a charter, and which is also set up by the founder. So the founder is really the person that sets up the foundation basically for eternity, which is probably also the reason why many people do it, because you can give yourself a kind of glow of eternity this way. Actually, in German, we call it the Stifterglanz, which is a sort of the glow of the foundation founder. Okay, so flexibility, the question, how flexible is a foundation? How flexible is the purpose? How flexible is the transfer of property? How flexible is the charter? Is a very important question when it comes to comparative research. So flexibility, founders, there are sort of three. I have on this slide, you can see 3 degrees of flexibility. The first degree, which can be seen as the highest degree, is that the founder can preserve the right to revoke the whole foundation. So if the founder thinks, oh, my stupid children, they don't deserve to be the beneficiaries of this foundation. I don't like this foundation at all anymore. I want to end it. In Austria, you can preserve the right to revoke the whole foundations. And this is something that some people would say, well, actually, is that still a foundation if you can do that? Yeah. The second kind of degree of flexibility, which is slightly lower, is that the founder can preserve the right to change the charter of the foundation. This is, he cannot revoke it, but he can change the charter, including the purpose. So this can be done in Austria and to a certain degree in Switzerland. And this is also, you can, if you think about what I said in the beginning, a foundation is a legal entity without members or shareholders. It has its will or its purpose, its direction isn't made up by its members or shareholders, but it comes from the will of the historic founder of this purpose. Then if you're very strict, you could say, no, this shouldn't be possible, because this in a way gives the foundation a kind of cooperative character if the founder can change his mind later. So in the big German foundation reform we just had in 2021, there no such right was granted, even though many people said, oh, it would make German foundation law much more flexible, much more attractive. But the legislator said, no, this is not proper foundation law. Foundation law means that the historic will of the founder is the decisive will. And even if the founder is still alive and thinks later, oh, I've been such a stupid person setting up these foundations, and how could I have ever done it? And why how can I change it? Then the law has to tell this person, we're very sorry, but you created this being with the will you had at this time of the creation. You can't change it now. It's now independent from you. So this is, we're coming to this is really about how you would describe the doctrinal character of the foundation. Okay, so the lowest degree is that the founders can empower the board of directors to change the charter. And then, of course, it's the question the question about the detail is, how much can you change? Can you change important parts? Can you change little parts? Usually, this requires approval of the foundation authority, of a supervisory authority. And according to the new German foundation law, it's possible, you can give guidelines in the charter what your board of directors can do. But if you haven't done so, the law provides 3 kind of ways to change it. You can adapt the charter if there has been a change of the situation, and if there has been a very, very serious change of the situation, you can even change the purpose, but only if there's a sort of serious change in the situation. So, for example, if you set up a foundation for a certain purpose that then proves to be impossible or illegal. Yeah. Okay, so this is flexibility. So 5th point, Foundations are administered and represented by the directors, who are expected to pursue the purpose set by the founder. Okay, I already mentioned that before. We don't have members, but this legal entity cannot act on its own, of course. So you need people to represent and administrate this. There is, in different countries, there's different regulation on the composition of the board of directors. For example, in Germany and Italy, there are almost no rules. The German law just requires you to have at least one director. That's all, nothing more. But it allows the founder to make provisions in the charter. So even though under German law, you only need one director, you can decide to have more than one, or you can have different boards. You can have a supervisory board or a board of directors running everyday business. You can have boards specifically for charitable purposes and other projects. So there's a great flexibility there. In Austria and Denmark, the law provides more detailed rules to start with. So, for example, they require boards to have a certain amount of independence from the founder or the founder's family. They require certain diversity of the board, and so on and so on. So there's some differences here as well. And then there's public supervision, point 6, for example, by courts, a governmental office, charity commission, or tax office. Again, here, the point of having these supervisions is, of course, that if you don't have members or shareholders, you have nobody who really has an interest to make sure that the purpose is really pursued. So in a way, one could say that that a foundation is a sort of a principal agent problem in its purest form, because the principal has often died, and the agent can run amok and do whatever he or she likes. So the supervision is there to supervise these directors from afar and see that they're doing really what the founder wanted. But of course, it depends a lot on how knowledgeable they are and how good and how well the equipment is selected, how competent they are. So this is something that depends very much on the people working there. So governance and supervision. As I said, detailed rules in Denmark and Austria, some rules in Sweden, very few in Germany, Switzerland, and Italy. Okay, here you see on the right side, you see this supervision authority, Stiftungsaufsicht. This is the German example, sort of kind of over the foundation. Then here we have the director, Vorstand, as it's called in German, running the foundation. Then it's possible to establish a sort of supervisory board or Aufsichtsrat. And then there is the supervisory authority, the supervision authority, conducting legality supervision. So it's important to note that the Stiftungsaufsicht, the supervision authority, they're not expected to look at every business the foundation incurs, but they look at if they're acting legally. Okay, final point for the classic foundation is that you need registration, of course. If we want to set up a legal form, a legal person, something with legal personality, we always need registration. So here as well. Okay, so now we're turning to, now that we've looked at what a foundation is, now it's time to make things even more complicated and say that, well, we have the classic foundations in the civil law sense, the kind of foundations I've described. We have foundations. We have charitable foundations, we have family foundations, we have other foundations, and they have no members, they have property, they have the foundation property, they're supervised and so on. Okay, but when we do comparative research, we shouldn't only look at the same. We should look beyond the names of legal institutions, but we should also look at their functions. And if you look at foundations, you see very quickly that in different legal systems, you have functional equivalents to foundations. Legal systems, practitioners do not only use foundations in the classical sense, but they use other entities, other forms for the same goals. And what you see here is the Bosch structure. I'm sure you all know Robert Bosch, yes? And maybe some of you know that when it comes to Robert Bosch, then there sometimes is some talk about the Robert Bosch Stiftung, the Robert Bosch Foundation. The Robert Bosch Stiftung is not a foundation in the classic sense. It is a charitable limited company. And you see that here on the right side of the picture. It is a charitable limited company. So it is a company, a normal GmbH, but in its charter, it has provisions there securing that profits cannot be distributed to shareholders. So in a way, you create a kind of foundation-like structure with property, with capital locked in this company. And in a way, this is the function of a foundation in a way. And the charitable, the G, the little G means gemeinnützig. That means it's pursuing a charitable purpose. And since German tax law does not require to use certain legal structures, but only looks at what you do, this is charitable like a foundation is charitable. But of course, there's an advantage of using this form rather than a normal foundation is that the structure is more flexible. You can change the charter of a limited company much more easily, and you have no public supervision. You only have the supervision of the tax authorities. They of course check whether you're really doing charitable work, but they don't care how you've organized what you do. And here you see that this Stiftungs GmbH, they hold 29% of the shares, and the Robert Bosch GmbH, so there's this limited, the GmbH, the limited company there at the bottom of the page, and this is the one running the business. And because it's a GmbH, you can really design the shares in a very flexible way. And you see that most of the voting rights is held by a limited partnership, and most of the capital shares are with Robert Bosch, with the foundation, with the Stiftung. And this means basically that those holding the shares, the voting rights, have no financial interest in the business, which is quite interesting, isn't it? Because you have people voting on decisions on business decisions, but they have no shareholder rights in a way that they won't get any money about that. The money all goes to the Stiftung, to the charitable limited company. And this is a structure, if you have heard about Patagonia, which transformed itself into a very interesting structure 2 years ago now, I think. This is basically very, very close to it. Functional equivalence. So what I want to tell you here is, if you want to understand the function of foundation law, it's not enough just to look at foundations in the classical legal sense, but you should look at other entities used for the same kind of purpose. So you can use limited companies, associations, all different kind of ways, but the sort of core here is that you want to that somehow property is in a way preserved for in the long run for a long-term oriented goal in a way. Okay, so and now we leave the civil law world and look at the common law, because the traditional foundation I've talked about now for quite some time isn't really something you see in the common law world. In the common law world, what is often used is the trust. And the trust is, I did trust law at Oxford, so that's how we sort of learned it, the sort of very basic trust. You have a settler, and the settler has some sort of right, some property, and the settler, with the full right, transfers the right to a trustee. And the trustee holds the legal interest in the right transferred, but holds this right for the benefit of another person, the beneficiary. And the different colors, I've chosen these colors because sometimes, or at least traditionally, this this creation, the setting up of a trust was described as a splitting of the legal interest and the beneficial interest. So that's why the settlor is the purple person, and the legal interest then becomes the right side, the red side, and then the beneficiary's rights are blue here. So in a way to show that. But if my trust tutor from Oxford, Bill Swadling, if he'd listen now, he would say, no, this is very wrong. Okay, so Bill, in case you're listening, no, I know it's wrong, but this is usually the way the trust is taught or explained in civil law countries. That's why I start this way. And I won't go any further because understanding the trust and understanding the character of the different rights involved is something that in the German legal profession and the German legal discussion in Germany can only compare to three-party unjust enrichment cases, so something very difficult. Anyways, this structure means the legal interest cannot be the trustee cannot be approached, or the legal interest will not be subject to if the trustee has some debts, the debtors cannot use the trust property. It's sort of immune from enforcement in case of insolvency. So it's quite secure in a way. So what you see here is that a trust is not a legal person. There's not a legal person, but it's just a way to hold a right for the benefit of another. Okay, there are some third-party effects here, but I will not go into too many details here. What you should know is that charitable trusts, and those are the trusts which are really interesting here for us now, are admissible even without clear-cut beneficiaries. So the charitable trust, in a way, is one of the few cases of an admissible purpose trust. So you can set up a trust, and usually you have beneficiaries, Konrad and Anne, for example. But if you have a charitable trust, you can just say for the good of the people and so on, and then you don't need concrete, specific beneficiaries, but just this purpose. And then, of course, you have to pursue it this way. Now, in the last decades in the US, there has been cases where the legislator has set up specific purpose trusts for holding business for long-term oriented projects. So, but this is something that's rather recent. In the US, tax is a foundation is not really a word for a legal entity, but it's a word for a charitable entity that has sort of enjoys tax benefits. And there are a number of entities that can enjoy such tax benefits in the US, but they depend in their organization very much on state law. So I will not go into much detail here, but the federal law, the federal tax law in the US requires that they have a certain structure, and especially that they do not pursue business, which is something we'll come back to. Okay, so now what is a foundation? Legal personality, no members or shareholders, purpose, transfer of property, charter, directors, supervision, registration, functional equivalence, and the trust. Now, check. We have finished the first part. Let's move on to the third or second part, enterprise foundations. This is something that Konrad has already mentioned that I will talk about, and now I will do that. Enterprise foundations. And I think it's very important here to underline that my perspective here is an interdisciplinary perspective. I have started working on enterprise foundations because I'm lucky to work with Steen Thomsen from Copenhagen Business School on this topic, and Steen Thomsen is a management and economist scholar. I'm a law professor, as you know, so I love this interdisciplinary exchange, but it's important to understand my approach here. That's why we start with an economic perspective, management perspective. Then we come to some legal questions and the ELI project. Then we'll try to discuss about a definition. Then we'll look at whether enterprise foundations are possible, permissible. And then we'll look at different kinds of enterprise foundations. Okay, enterprise foundations. Here you see Steen Thomsen. his work is really fundamental here. He there are other scholars, and he also works with other scholars, but I think he's really the sort of the expert on this topic. He is Danish, and he works at Copenhagen Business School. And this is important because he works a lot with Danish foundations. Okay, we start, his starting point were traditional business and economic theories about how business ownership should be structured. And he started from this theory, this very important theory, that profit-oriented shareholders are necessary for successful businesses. This was a sort of kind of accepted idea among economist management scholars, that really the goal, the purpose of the firm is to create money for its shareholders, Milton Friedman and so on. And only this way we can create a successful business. Or to put it a bit more sort of in a bit more negative or pop culture way, greed is good. Yeah. But Steen Thomsen looked at the Danish foundation-owned companies, and Denmark is full of companies owned by foundations. And he thought, well, actually, they must be these must be very bad businesses, because they have foundations as their owners, not shareholders looking for private profit. So actually, if this theory is right, then these businesses must be failing. And so he started researching them, and he found, no, they're not failing. They live longer than normal businesses. They are economically successful, at least as successful as other businesses, sometimes even more. They have a very, or good, at least good ESG performance, better than other companies. They have, and this I find quite funny, that's something he found recently, they have a lower crime rate and lower divorce rate among employees, these businesses. The last very, very interesting point he found is that, and this is something he's still thinking about, is that these kind of foundations may even create or help secure social equality, at least a certain degree of it. Because what he did was, he looked at all the foundation-owned businesses in Denmark, and he thought, okay, if all these businesses, all these interests they held, if all of this would be held by private individuals, by private families, a sort of 1%, 2% families, then Denmark would be much more financially unequal, the population. There would be many more rich people, and the differences between rich and poor people would be very much higher. So he thought, well, actually, maybe these foundation businesses are part of what Denmark makes Denmark special as a business, as a country. And so he started researching these businesses, these foundations around the world. And he saw this, it's a very small group of businesses, but he says, well, maybe they can make a good contribution to society. So maybe we should think about them more. So here on this picture, you see some foundation-owned businesses. So there's, for example, there's the Tata Foundation, the Tata Group in India. There's IKEA, there's Zeiss in Germany, Bosch. You see that Bosch is using Lidl, you know, Lidl as well, I heard. Aldi, Rolex, Victorinox, and here you also see the Danish foundations like Novo Nordisk, Maersk, and Carlsberg. Maybe you know Carlsberg beer. I think it's not as good as Polish beer, but it's an interest. Yeah. And you see these, and what might also be interesting is because companies like Novo Nordisk, Maersk, and Carlsberg are owned by foundations, they will not be bought by Chinese or other investors. So that's okay. So you see on this slide here, you see how many shares of listed companies are held by foundations in these countries. In Denmark, you see that there 63% of market capitalization of the shares are held by foundations. 26% in Austria, 89% in Sweden, in Italy 6%, Switzerland 5%, Germany. Germany is quite small, and the US is also very small. So interesting economically, isn't it? So, but we are all lawyers, so we can be very grateful for this great research. But of course, we have other questions. What are enterprise foundations from a legal perspective? Lawyers, we want a precise definition. We just want beautiful examples. What special rules, if any, govern enterprise foundations? Are there special rules in different countries? And can the law be improved in order to make the concept more accessible? Or maybe if it is really true that some of these foundation-owned businesses are so successful and maybe even good for society, what can we do as lawyers to make this concept interesting, usable in different systems? Okay, so that's how our work started. Here we have a book on enterprise foundation law and comparative perspective, edited by the two of us. And you see Denmark, Sweden, Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, and the US were part of the first edition. And we're working on a second edition. And all these countries will be part of it. And of course, we will have a Polish chapter, which will be written by wonderful Anne Weber, who is a member of this faculty. And we are very, very much looking forward to this perspective on the Polish enterprise, on the Polish Family Foundation, but also on all the other interesting countries. So, for example, Hungary has interesting law there, but also France and of course Liechtenstein and so on. So I'm sure it will be a great book. The first book is available open access. So if you want to have a look, you just go on the website of Intersensia. It's available open access, and the second edition will be open access too. So I'm very happy that I can advertise it even now. Okay, and then there's the ELI project, the European Law Institute project, and the goal of this project is what I just said: map the different kinds of enterprise foundation legal regimes, and also suggest some hard and soft law rules that could make the concept accessible and also beneficial, at least to the degree lawyers can help with that. Okay, so third point now. Definition. What is an enterprise foundation? Of course, we know it is something with the foundation doing business in a way, but that, of course, will not be sufficient for a lawyer. So it is an enterprise foundation is a foundation that runs a business itself or holds a controlling interest in a business. Okay. Foundation running businesses, there are some, of course. They used always, I mean, this is not something new. When at the time when you only had charitable foundations, of course, there could be foundations running hospitals, for example, or kindergartens, something like that. Okay, that could be seen as a sort of business. But of course, in today's world, this is much less, this is a rare thing to do. But most enterprise foundations hold shares in a company. So the question is, when is it really an enterprise foundation? Of course, if you just have one share in a company as the foundation, then you would say, well, this is just an investment, isn't it? But what we are interested here in, and because apparently there are some effects of foundation ownership, we expect that to be connected to at least some sort of larger influence. The foundation apparently has some sort of influence as a non-extractive, as a non-profit oriented shareholder. And this can only be relevant in a way if the foundation has certain if it has a controlling interest at least. So of course, if you have 100% of shares, it's the same as if the business is in a way run by themselves. Well, not really legally, of course, but the effects are there. But sort of how much of a majority would you require? Do you even require a majority? Because is 25% maybe enough so that you can prevent changes in the charter, or do you want 51%? So this is of course something to be debated. Yeah, and that's not always clear. My idea would be that you need that the controlling interest is relevant, and this might not be very precise, but we know this from the law of groups, for example, that you need controlling interest. So I think this is something we can work with in a way. Okay. Then of course the next question is: may a foundation run a business? Is that permissible? Can they do that? And there again we have some differences here. Full endorsement in Denmark, Sweden, and Switzerland. Here, no problem at all. In Denmark, we even have a special legal regime for enterprise foundation. They have their special rules for how their boards should be organized. They have they even have a special supervisory authority, while normal foundations are supervised by, I think, the Ministry of the Interior. Enterprise foundations are supervised by the Ministry of Industry and Business and Economy. So this shows that we have that the Danish really see that as something very special, these kind of foundations. And they even have a minimal capital requirement, these kind of foundations. So a bit like what we in Germany we have with the GmbH. You need 25,000 euro to establish a GmbH, and here you need I don't know how many krona, but you need a certain amount of krona. Okay, you have some restrictions in Germany, in Italy, and in Austria. In Austria, the private foundations, of course, they can hold shares, but they may not. They have some limitations in how much influence they can, how much they can influence the day-to-day businesses. So they may hold shares, and they may also say something about the big lines, but they're not supposed to run everyday decisions in the business. Okay, so looking at how I've started this presentation by talking about charitable foundations and family foundations. And here, this division comes up in relation to enterprise foundations as well. So we have charitable enterprise foundations, family enterprise foundations, and others, which I might call pure enterprise foundations. Let's see what I mean. A charitable enterprise foundation is one that pursues a charitable purpose. In addition to their role as of owners of this company, they pursue charitable purposes. So for example, Novo Nordisk, Novo Nordisk Foundation, they are the shareholder of the company, of the Novo Nordisk company, but they also do research, they support research and social causes and so on. And of course, you could say that these kind of charitable foundations are, I mean, they have in a way, they have a double, I mean, the effect is they do some charitable work, some philanthropic work that might be seen as beneficial. And at least the Danish foundations are known as very good employees and have these effects that Steen Thomsen researched. So the other example here is a German charitable enterprise foundation, the Körber Stiftung, and they have two boards on the foundation, and one of the boards is responsible for looking at the philanthropic causes, and the other look at their role as shareholders. So they are more sort of business oriented. Because of course, if you have a charitable foundation, there might be a certain goal, or it might be very attractive for the people doing the philanthropic work to get as much money as possible out of the company to further their charitable goals, and this might not be the best thing for the business. So it's quite good and a good idea to split that up a bit. Also, a question of competence. People doing philanthropic work, organizing it, are usually not necessarily the most knowledgeable about business. Okay, so you can also have a family foundation, family enterprise foundation. And here you have a family foundation and a company. And this, as I said already in the beginning, is what family businesses sometimes turn into when they think, oh, we don't have a good person in our family. We want to run the business. We don't want to get to give all the shares to one member of the family. Or maybe we just have too many people. We maybe have 50 family members, and we say, oh, that would be too many shareholders. They will just fight among themselves. So maybe it's better we put all the shares in the family foundation, and then we put family members on the board, or we have at least some of them on the board, and maybe some of them working in the company. So this can be a model for succession in family businesses, and it's going more and more popular in Germany. It's not clear. I mean, of course, they're doing no charitable work. And of course, that's sort of course, the charitable foundations might be more beneficial in so far. But if one thinks that preserving family foundations for the long term is also something positive, a positive goal, of course, this might be a good goal as well. But of course, they are not charitable enterprise foundation and family enterprise foundation. They are not the same. So you should differentiate between them. They have different goals. Okay, what you can also do is combine the two. So this is a double foundation. And you can have, a bit like what you saw with the Bosch model, you put the shares with the dividend rights in a charitable foundation and the shares with the voting right in the family foundation. So you can sort of split up the two of them, the two roles. Of course, this model has tax reasons. Of course, if there's this general truth, the universal truth that if there's something crazy in company law you don't understand, it usually has a tax reason behind it. So here what if you put all the shares, the shares with dividend and voting rights and the capital into the charitable foundation, you can enjoy some tax, some inheritance and gift tax advantages. Of course, but it can also have other reasons, because in this way you can sort of really differentiate between the administration of the business and the philanthropic process. So there are also some good reasons to do that, not just tax reasons. Okay, now we're turning to the pure enterprise foundation. Is it possible just to set up a foundation that only has the purpose to run the business? To be a responsible, long-term oriented owner? Is that possible? In Denmark, Switzerland, Sweden, and Italy, though Italy, it's not quite clear, and also there's some debate in Denmark, but usually many people there say yes. In Germany, the so-called herrschende Meinung, the most scholars say no, it's not. I actually don't agree with them. I think there are considerable arguments to the contrary, but their argument is that you cannot create a foundation that has only the goal to preserve itself, and running a business is basically the same. If you cannot have established a foundation just holding a bank account, so just holding the shares of a business or running a business is basically administrating its property. I don't think that's true, because running a business, being a responsible owner, is something that has effects outside. It's not the same as holding a bank account, but that's the debate here. This is my favorite enterprise foundation. This is a foundation, and it was set up in a German one. It was set up at a time when it was still, at least in this land, federal state, still permissible to set up pure enterprise foundations. And according to its Article 2, it is the purpose of the foundation to ensure the prosperous development of the two limited companies. So it's a pure enterprise foundation. Okay, so now I'm coming to the end. I just want to mention some usages of foundations in German business structures. First, the foundations are sometimes used as the liable partner in limited partnerships, the so-called German Kommanditgesellschaft. So we have the basic structures on the right side with the two partners with limited liability and the foundation as the liable partner. And on the left side, you see Kaufland, and you see, well, it's beautifully complicated, isn't it? So you have you have a kind of Bosch structure, kind of double foundation structure at the top with a limited company, limited partnership, and a charitable limited company at the top. Then you have a company in the middle, and then you have the limited partnership and foundations below that. And the purpose of the foundation here is really to be the stable, liable partner, so that you don't need to change the liable partner all the time. So this makes the whole structure more long-term oriented and more stable. Yeah. Okay. Or here we have Bertelsmann, Avato, and here you see on the top you have the Mohn family. Then we have three foundations: the BVG Foundation, the Reinhard Mohn Foundation, and the Bertelsmann Foundation, and they are holding together the capital. You see the capital of the Bertelsmann SE KG, so a limited. No, it's a limited partnership by shares. It's a KGaA and an SE. So again, a little kind of a wash structure with some foundations involved in it. So you see, it's you can really do a lot with it. To the end of this little tour. First, I think that we have great works on comparative foundation law, especially Klaus Haupt at the Max Planck Institute in Hamburg did wonderful work on it, and I'm very honored and very happy to work on this area too, and to do that, building on his work and using a functional approach, not only looking at foundations but at different kind of entities. Second, I think that foundations and functional equivalents have some potential for long-term oriented business ownership. And in Germany, there's a movement called steward ownership movement, also in other countries, where they say, okay, this is really what we want. We think this kind of long-term orientation we can do in different structures is something that's important. And it's important part to transform economy into a more long-term oriented, in a more long-term oriented way. Then what should we do? How should it be done? How should we, can we describe a good legal framework for foundations and especially enterprise foundations? Of course, we think that the legality and legitimacy of such enterprise foundations should be accepted, and that they should be able to be formed with a charitable purpose, but also as responsible long-term oriented owners of businesses. We think that should be an acceptable purpose. And we also think that family purposes should be permissible in a limited way because they're important for family businesses. But there's a great discussion in our group because actually we see that there are differences between family foundations and charitable foundations because they just have different goals and their social effects might not be as great as charitable foundations. Okay, tax treatments. We think that tax treatment should ensure neutrality with other business forms of business ownership. You could think of of doing things that of course, that encourage charitable work, but not necessarily just because of this business structure. And last, we think that regulation, hard and soft law, should ensure good governance and transparency. Transparency, of course, is something we need to be careful with in the digital age where everything can be accessed easily. But definitely there is a problem or a risk that foundations can be used for secret dealings, which there should be some amount of transparency there. We need rules for effective boards and for foundation registries, and also we need effective supervisory authorities. For legality supervision, especially in cases of enterprise foundations, you don't want supervisory authorities with no understanding of business, but they should be strictly limited to legality supervision. So they shouldn't come to the business and say, oh, we think you should invest in that and not this. That shouldn't be their job. There should be protection against misuse, but should be enough room for entrepreneurial flexibility. Because if one allows that foundations are involved in business ownership, businesses fail now and then. And this is not something that supervisory authorities should prevent. I hope that this shows that foundation law and enterprise foundation law is fascinating topic for comparative research. And I'm very much looking forward in learning how the Polish Family Foundation, how it will develop and what we can learn about it for the future of the foundation. Thank you so much.
Professor Sanders, thank you very much. It was fascinating presented in such a well-structured way, so easily understandable that you couldn't do it better. So I think that we all enjoyed your presentation. Now we understand more about the concept, kind of the approach, interdisciplinary approach toward enterprise foundations. Because in Poland, more traditionally, when you thought of enterprise foundations, you usually had in mind a foundation that could run business on its own. So kind of as an active entrepreneur, not passive entrepreneur, so simply owner or shareholder of a company. Now, thanks to this interdisciplinary approach, we see that there are more opportunities and more flexibility, but also we see that there are a lot of questions and a lot of issues. And foundation law is kind of developing in a very diverse way, in very many directions. And we could see even during your presentation, very many interactions between company law on one side and foundation law on the other side, kind of going into the direction of creation of a hybrid, something between a company and a foundation. And I think that all who participate, and we had more than 50 people online, so very many participants, you may have some questions and comments. So now the floor will be yours. We will first take down the presentation to see, yeah, perfect, to see all who are with us. And if you have any questions or comments, please raise your electronic hand, and then I will be happy to give you the floor. Or if you can't use your mic because of any reason, you can write down your question using chat. And those who are also here in a classroom, you are also invited to ask questions. And then it's easy to use your computer or somebody next to you. If you don't have your computer, it will be easily visible for all attendees who attend remote. I see the first question. Anne-Marie Weber, please go ahead.
So much. Do I have to use the mic in my phone? So everyone hears me, not in my phone, but in my computer. Okay, perfect. So I wanted to pick up on the last point you made on the last slide, being regulation, and what kind of ideas or what kind of, let's say, prerequisites the regulation in the future should fulfill. So I was wondering, since you're making all this wonderful comparative work and looking at foundations in different jurisdictions, do you see any path of, let's say, convergence of a foundation law within the European Union? Do you see a role of, let's say, partially or totally harmonizing foundation law within the European Union, or do you rather think that this, comparative work will go into the direction of, let's say, having model laws or soft laws? So, what is the path you're seeing there? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a great question. There was the idea of having a sort of foundation, European foundation, a couple of years ago, and that failed. So I don't think that we will have a European foundation anytime soon. And I also think that from looking at the comparative work we've done so far, there are still great differences in the systems. So that's why our project, the ELI project, will try to develop some model laws to give some ideas for the development in the member states. So we will give explanations for it, and of course every member state who wanted to adopt the whole thing would be great. But our idea is more or less that they will pick up certain parts they find interesting. I see when I look at foundation law so far that we have different approaches. So, for example, the German-speaking world within Europe, they are very positive about family foundations and they use them frequently. In the Nordic countries, you have this strong tradition of the charitable enterprise foundations, and also we have charitable enterprise foundations in many countries, but we see especially strong ones in Denmark, Sweden, and so on, and especially in Denmark. And I think they are they're great. They have great things to offer. For example, this special framework for enterprise foundations. They're very efficient supervision, and they have a comply or explain mechanism for governance. So they have governance, soft law governance, and some with comply or explain modes on how the governance of a enterprise foundation should be run. So I think that's a lot to learn from, but I don't see that this model will be adopted across Europe anytime soon. So I think we still need some development, but I hope that we can at least learn from those countries which are successful. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. If I don't see any questions now, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I have a question, because you mentioned that in Germany there are structures which use charitable limited companies.
Yes.
Are those companies having any shareholders, or they're like, yes, so in this Porsche model, who is the shareholder of this charitable limited company?
Actually, I don't know. So it looks like a foundation because it has no shareholder there, but it must have a shareholder somewhere. And this is really at least for me, and this is why I started this discussion this way, stressing that a foundation in a classic sense has no shareholders. And I think this is a fundamental difference on how to differentiate between the collective decision-making within a body that has shareholders or members and within a foundation that just has this sort of purpose of the founder still working there. With respect to the purpose of the founder and how flexible it can be used, there are huge differences between the member states. So how will this purpose be interpreted and so on? But I still think on a fundamental level, there's some differences there. And I think this idea of this hybrid, I think in a way, this is a kind of hybrid, isn't it? To have shareholders. And if you have shareholders, then of course, they need the right to adjust the purpose and to do everything. But what you really have there in this charitable company is a kind of hybrid without any rights to profits, to dividends, but with decision rights. And this is something I find very interesting, I must say.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Plesiński, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a slightly, maybe less legal question, but referring to the research of Professor Thompson you were referring to in Denmark. So you said that what he discovered during his research is that the companies owned by foundations, they had a very beneficial impact on society. Employees were happier, there was less inequality, wages were happier, I think I didn't get there was less inequality and so on. But I think I didn't get what was the reason for that? What did he find out?
Yeah, well, that's of course the question. Why did it happen? As an economist, as a scholar, they work empirically. So they look at the outcomes of different kind of business structures and see, okay, where are employees happy? What kind of outcome will the business have? This just gives you statistical data, and it shows you that you have that some companies, if you compare a larger number of them, behave differently than others. But it doesn't really tell you why. So, but the idea or the assumption is that because you have this very stable, I mean, these enterprise foundations have some shares on the market, on the capital market, but they hold the controlling shares themselves. And the idea is that having this controlling shareholder that can take a long-term perspective, that isn't looking for short-term bits, will create a more beneficial climate within the businesses. Because you don't need to fire people so quickly. You can have more long-term thinking. You just have other goals than just doing business as quickly and as profitable as possible. So that's the assumption. Maybe there's something else behind it, but there's hard empirical data that this is the outcome. And so he believes that this is the reason behind it. That is, it sort of creates a more economically stable society with more long-term orientation, basically, and that this is good for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Romanowski.
The institution of family foundation in Poland is very unique, but it is already a very popular, like a rising pop star, I would say. But I would take a risk to say that this is thanks to tax incentives.
Yes.
Not because of some innovative corporate ideas. It was built on a model of a limited liability company. So lawyers, we know that, at least it's mine, opinion, have a tendency and in love to complicate things. For example, to create new entities, and we had a chance to see this very interesting today. Very interesting. The principle of economic thinking, called Occam's razor, teaches that one should not create entities beyond the needs. One should strive for simplicity. So, I'm heading to the question. I believe that the concept of the concept of the company is built as a matter of fact on the concept of the trusteeship. So, as a matter of principle, it was at least assumption admitted in unforged law. A limited liability company is a very flexible legal form which makes it possible to realize any purpose permitted by law, economic and not economic. It could be also charitable companies. So putting aside tax incentives, encouraging the choice of a specific legal form for organized activity, I'm curious, what features, in your opinion, should a so-called family foundation, I'm naming it so-called because this is, as a matter of fact, private foundation, or more broadly, as I said, a private foundation, have that distinguish it from a company? And what goals does a company not allow it to achieve? Perhaps tax stimulation and the principles of freedom of contract in the formation company. What's that?
Wow. I think I should write a book to answer this question. It's a fascinating question. It's a fascinating question.
That will make intention.
Yes. Well, thank you. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Actually, yes. I mean, but this is a great. I will first say something about what you've said first in order to evade. Try to speak here. Okay, good. So tax benefits are very often part of it, and I understand that this is the same in Poland. I must say that I don't yet understand the Polish Family Foundation well enough to fully understand it, and I'm still sort of looking forward to learning more about it, and also to learn what kind of people are using it now, for what purposes. I think that will be very interesting. So I cannot say anything about that because I'm new to this topic, but I think it's very interesting to look at what kind of people will use it. So the second point. Third point, I think you're completely right. There are the limited company is extremely flexible. It can be used for everything, and it can be used for charitable purposes. And that's when I showed you the structure, the Bosch structure, for example, you saw that they're using limited companies the same way as foundations. So yes, what? Yes. So absolutely. And so what I see there, what this shows me, I think, is that there might be a need for a sort of hybrid structure, because the only thing that the limited liability company does not offer is this kind of long-term orientation, this kind of fixed capital, which makes it more sort of something you can use for the future. So apparently, I mean, putting tax reasons aside, maybe people only use these family foundations now for tax reasons. That's possible. But if leaving this aside, what people choosing a foundation often look for is something that makes it possible to put in something for the long term, and to isolate this property, at least in some way, from the next generation in a way. So, and this can be especially interesting and important when it comes to businesses, because you might have built a beautiful business and you think, okay, I can give that to my children. But maybe tomorrow they think, oh, finally, mommy has died. Now I will sell the whole stuff to a private equity investor, and then I move to the Bahamas or to the south of France or wherever you like to move inside in beautiful Poland with money. And it might be the case that the person setting up this foundation says, I don't want that to happen. I want to put my business here, or I want my property here, and I want them to be able to administrate it for the future, but I don't want them to sell it, because if they just sell it, I could have sold it myself and lived in France as well, or in Poland somewhere. So I think this might be something that people are looking for, this kind of long-term orientation, which a company cannot really offer, because a company will always be open for changes and can always be liquidated. So far, yes, but even the closed company can be changed. It can be liquidated. The business in it can be sold. Yes, but
is also
yes, absolutely. And the foundation is not, because if a foundation runs its course, or if a foundation stops, then it will be liquidated for the benefit of a third party, usually. Sometimes for the family, but usually it's not that easy. So that is something. So when I come to what if we look about hybrids, what should a foundation offer, and what might a hybrid between a foundation and a company offer? I think that what a foundation needs to offer is some workable way to make a purpose last, to continue a purpose for the future. And a hybrid might be able to continue some sort of long-term perspective, but with more influence of members or shareholders. That would be my short answer to it.
It's very interesting. My experience also why the family foundation is so popular.
Yes.
And a private foundation. By the way, Paul's now resigned from seeking for similar solutions in Switzerland, in Luxembourg, Malta, and so on, so on. But there are two reasons. The first one, tax incentives.
Yes, absolutely.
That. And the second one is to use the best form to prevent the business ownership changes.
Yes.
And frankly speaking, I don't find any other reasons for popularity of this form. And I'm just thinking that's why it was my question, it would be very interesting to dwell on it, I believe, is that if such goals could not be achieved within the scope of this very flexible concept of the company. So that's why I believe that it's not a mistake that the personal side compared it to the hybrid between, frankly speaking, referring to the company concept.
Yes. Well, actually, I mean, of course, my reasons about talking about this is with good reason, because I mentioned the word steward ownership, and the concept steward ownership is one that really wants to create this kind of change of sort of owners with voting rights, but without dividend rights, to make it sort of, to create this kind of hybrid. And they say that companies like Bosch and also Patagonia are really looking for that. And there's, in Germany at the moment, there is a movement, and they say we want a hybrid form. We want a hybrid form, not as a foundation, but as a company with this kind of long-term orientation. And this hybrid form, in a way, is on the agenda of the current German government. So let's see where it will lead to. The German government will soon be over. So, I mean, this one. So we don't know what will happen yet, but this is something I have been working on for some time. So I think it's interesting. Thanks. Thank you.
Great discussion. I saw first Dr. Just okay, yes. So Dr. Homu, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have a question relating to the purpose of the foundation you didn't mention until now. And in my practice, I'm getting questions from board members who are considering the family foundation as an instrument to isolate the property and preserve it for the case of liability case, so as similar to the securities.
As an access.
Exactly. So they are not entrepreneurs.
Yes.
There is no question of succession, but there is a question to separate the property from themselves. However, the law is so flexible that they can still have a kind of control over the charity, but you cannot take the foundation, not charity, foundation, from them, the ownership, because there is no ownership over the foundation, but there is a control.
Yes. Very good point. Thank you so much. You, on the last slide, there was this that you should prevent misuse. That was a sort of shorthand for that very important discussion. This is closely connected to this idea or to the past of family foundations and the fideikommissen. Because the fideikommissen, the purpose of a fideikommissen, setting up a fideikommissen, was I'm a noble, well, I'm this noble family, and I have I'm afraid that my children will just squander the money, and then the castle has to be sold and everything. So we put everything there, and they can still live in the castle, and they can still live off the money. But and no enforcement is possible into that. But they cannot sell it, and they might live in reasonable poverty. But this will be preserved. So this is this long tradition, and this is the reason the fideikommissen was so much under discussion and so much an object of hate and in the 18th and 19th century, because this was seen as a sort of the symbol of the privileged, of the nobility and of the rich, that they can sort of put themselves outside the economic circles. And so I think this is in a way an old problem. And I think what is necessary is to have some devices in the law of insolvency, for example, which makes it possible to, in a way, pierce the foundation and go into this and get to that property. So, for example, either going through the rights of the beneficiaries or or for example, to sort of attack, I don't know Polish insolvency law, but I suppose there is something that you can sort of revoke a gift if it's made and to take it outside the realm of your creditors. So I think there are some tools one can use, but I think what's important is that these foundations are in a way transparent insofar that you know what kind of foundation it is, who is behind it, when was it set up, and so that creditors have a chance to get through it. What is really problematic are these kind of structures in countries where all of this is sort of opaque and you can't get anywhere. So that would be my answer. That there's a long tradition of it, and this is something that if one looks at the good aspects or the promising aspects of enterprise foundations or foundations in general, one has to be very aware of that there are these kind of possibilities to use them in a way that is not in the best interest of the legal system. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? As for now, I don't see any. So I will have one more question, more about kind of history. Because in Poland, when the new law on family foundations was introduced, the strong opponents were those who are involved or acting on behalf of charitable foundations. They said that this was wrong idea, because then the notion of foundation could be inflated, and the entire concept would be too complicated, not so clear. So it's a bad idea for charitable foundations to allow to introduce private foundations, family foundations in Poland. Was it similar in other countries? Do you have any ideas if there is kind of such strong controversy between charitable foundations on one side and private foundations on the other?
Yes, absolutely. In Germany, I showed you, Germany is a good example of this development I told you about, from the charitable foundation to the sort of neutral purpose foundation. So and in 2002, in the big foundation reform in 2002, when some parts of foundation law were unified within Germany, that was something that Carsten Schmidt, whom you know well, said that maybe the concept of the foundation will be inflated, and it will lose its glory of the charitable name, so to speak. In Austria, this problem was prevented in a way by giving it a different name and having two kinds of different foundations. The Federal Foundation for charitable work, and the private foundation specifically designed for the goals of creating business ownership or creating something for families, private foundations. So this debate has happened in other countries as well, and the question is what to do about it. Maybe give a different name, and I understand here you have the family foundation. Is there a separate one for charitable? Yes, so probably that's how they try to solve it. It might lead to some sort of limited deflation, but in a way it offers may offer some very interesting prospects for business succession. So I think it will not sort of stop the work of charitable foundations, and I think it at least if you look at other countries, it will be managed. Foundations and charitable foundations in Germany, for example, charitable foundations are still the majority of all foundations. We have about 20,000 foundations in Germany, and there are about 7,000 maybe family foundations. We don't know the exact number, and they're still on the rise, but I think there will be still enough charitable foundations. There is one here.
Excellent, thank you very much. I see Mr. Gurne.
And then there's another question.
Yeah, but Let's start.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah,
start
yeah,
with
yeah.
Mr. Gurne, but please wait a second because we need to adjust the voice here. So just a second. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this very interesting introduction about the foundation law. I have one question. At the beginning, you said about the Aufsichtsbehörde, so the control authority in Germany, about the foundation. And my question is, are the effect of these controls, is it possible, for example, that the Aufsichtsbehörde said, okay, there are some mistakes in the foundation, and for example, we want that the board members will be changed, or what are the effects of this control of this Aufsichtsbehörde? This is the first question, and the second question is there a teamwork, a connection between the work of this Aufsichtsbehörde and the tax authorities in Germany? Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you. That's two very interesting questions. The first is sort of the Aufsichtsbehörde, the Stiftungsbehörde. Yes, the Stiftungsbehörde, they can ask for a change of members of the board, and they can do certain things there, and they have different kind of tools what they can do in case of illegal behavior. So they have legality control, so they can look at the legality of actions, and they have to agree to all changes of the charter. So they all, if you want to change something about the foundation, you have to ask them, to ask their permission. There is some debate on how effective they are, because if they wanted to do their job effectively, then you need some sort of, then you need some resources, and apparently that's not always the case. Something that might be interesting to add here is that private foundations are sometimes put out of the scope of the supervision in some German länder. For example, in Bavaria, private foundations are outside of the scope of the supervisory authority. So, and in other states like North Rhine-Westphalia, so for example, you have a limited supervision. Because the argument is that because they have private purposes, the public has not so much interest in what they're going on, in what is going on there. I'm not so sure. I mean, yes, I see the point, but of course you could find some counter arguments to that. But what is, no matter if there is a supervision or not, supervisory authority involved or not, what is definitely important is that you have good internal governance. So internal governance inside foundations is a very, very important topic. And I'm sure that this topic will come up in Poland soon as well, or maybe it's already discussed. Because even if you have the supervisory authority involved, they cannot do the job of good internal governance. So you need a internal supervisory board is good. And there should be some sort of independence of board members and so on to make sure that this will not be a sort of a place where people will just take money and things disappear and so on. So I think this is very, very important so we need the external and the internal governance. And I think that one of the work of the ELI project will also be to make some suggestions for good internal governance for foundations. Point one. Point two, the working of the of foundations and tax authorities. This is a very important question. I'm not quite sure how this actually works in practice, but what I know that the tax authorities are very good in sort of checking whether the preconditions for charitable tax benefits are obeyed. So, for example, they look if the if the salaries of the directors are too high, and they look if money is spent in certain ways. So I think they are probably, their work is probably, I think their work is quite effective, and that might also be a reason why there haven't been many, or I don't even know of one scandal of one of those limited companies that's used as a functional equivalent to a foundation, because I think the financial supervision of the tax offices, looking whether tax benefits are really deserved, their work I think is quite useful here. So I'm not so sure about the practice, but from what I heard, I think the tax offices do a very good job here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have more questions, please.
My name is Nicole Kozioł. I have technical problems. Can I ask my question freely?
Yeah, or you can use. Maybe you could. Yeah.
So my question is, what do you think about the establishment by the Family Foundation by Heinz Hermann Thiele? And how do you assess the problems connected with that, with the establishment of the Family Foundation after his death? Under German law, it happened, I don't know, something like 2 years ago. Hermann Heinz Thiele died, and after his death, it was various problems connected with the establishment of the Family Foundation.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't really know this case, so I don't want to say anything which is too stupid about it. So I'm sorry. I will try, but if it's an interesting case, I will definitely have a look. So maybe I should know it. I should know many things. I don't. But thank you very much. I'm sorry, I cannot answer that yet now. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Are there the last chance, the last call? Are there any other questions?
Apparently not.
Yeah, if this is not the case.
Okay, so if this is not the case, then I would like first thank you very much once again for a fantastic presentation, and you see what you did. We had great discussion, so many questions, so in-depth issues that it's another confirmation how provocative on one side and interesting from the other side your presentation was. We are very happy that we had you here, and we are very grateful for the presentation. And I would like to thank all the participants that you are with us. Still very many people, and it was more than 50 people in the middle of our seminar today. And I would like particularly to thank all of you who asked questions. They were very interesting, very inspiring for further thoughts, and in fact they were kind of not the end but the beginning of next ideas for next books or seminars. Also, I would like to share with you on chat link to a website that is connected to the project run here at Warsaw University, comparative project on private foundations, where also we have some seminars and we look at private foundations from different perspectives. So you are encouraged to follow the website, and then you will find more information about other events concerning private foundations. And as I said, it's a kind of a tradition that at the end of this seminar, I share with you the invitation for the next seminar. This time, the next seminar will be quite shortly, within a month, in March, and this will be more practically oriented, although our guest will be a law professor and practitioner at the same time. Professor Andrzej Kubas from Jagiellonian University. It will be in Polish, and the title in Polish: O cywilnoprawnych sankcjach wadliwości czynności prawnych zdań kilka. So the invitation is for you to be with us either remotely or personally, and it will be also sent out in due time. And now, once again, thank you very much, Anne, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sanders, for your wonderful and splendid presentation. Thank you.
Very kind.
Thank you so much. It was a great privilege and pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm very much looking forward to your work on private foundations, because I think this is will be extremely important, not only for practitioners and scholars in Poland, but also in abroad. So I will be looking very much forward to your work there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.